the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
We've had 5 races with 5 different winners, and so as we head into the back half of the inaugural INDYCAR ButtKicker iRacing Pro Series, the question lingers in the air: who will be our very first champion? And so with that all setting the stage, we head to Mid-Ohio, to the penultimate of our road course rounds, and we can't wait to kick things off here from what is a historic road course. My name's Arjuna Kangupati, delighted you will join us here on the iRacing Esports Network and live on INDYCAR's YouTube, joined as ever by Kenneth Bueno. And Kenneth, we've had what has been one of the wildest 5 races to open up a championship I can imagine. And now we kick off the back half of the season. What are your expectations as the season still lies very much ahead of us?
Well, more parity, Arjuna. We've seen 5 races and 5 different winners. No one has been able to go to victory lane more than once. And when you add a technical road course like Mid-Ohio is on the schedule this late into the going, it may add some spice to what's already a well-cooked meal that will prep ourselves for the championship later this season. We have plenty of storylines about championship leaders potentially missing, other drivers making comebacks in the final 2 road course races of this schedule, because ovals will take over from here on out, so it will be surprising.
And wow, we had one of the most interesting races, at least it was poised to be interesting, until a caution at the very end as we headed to the Brickyard. It was private label Team Hyper on the front row. Rob Malechka, the iRacing Indy 500 champion of 2024, leading alongside his teammate Jason Brophy. But in the heart of the pack where the dirty air was, very difficult for some drivers to try and fight their way on forward. And it was really a race kind of dictated by strategy as drivers saved some fuel and waited for the inevitable cautions.
And there were a lot of conservative moments with the field, not many drivers being as aggressive, but past halfway when the pit stop settled, that's when the chaos turned up. A ton of drivers being involved in incidents. That was Jordan Caruso spinning down the back straightaway. Plenty of changes for the race lead involving those private label Team Hype machines, and plenty of drama as well. Michele Costantini and others getting involved with the red line machines. Lots of the heavy hitters in this championship taken out at Indianapolis, but that's how chaotic it can be. Things really ramped up in the last half.
That was Luis Nunez hard into the wall and then down onto pit lane for the green wheels there of Luke McEwen. All went wrong, but able to slow it down and wind it down. Florian Labigra just avoided real disaster there, but then unfortunately hard into the inside wall. That was the first of 3 different issues for the Apex Racing team. Plenty more chaos though. Jason Brophy picked his way through all of it before this late race restart resulted in an additional caution, and the race finishing behind the safety car with Rob Malechka. Guess who? 5 races, 5 different winners. It was meant to be, wasn't it, Kenneth?
It was, and for private label Team Hype meant to be as well. They have swept the oval races this season, but how important this race will be dependent on who you are as a driver. From now, after Mid-Ohio, we only have 1 road course race left. 3 of the next 4 will be dominated by ovals at Gateway, Milwaukee, and Nashville Superspeedway to close the season. So for those road course ringers who have been dominating the points for most of the championship, now's when they have to lock in on the oval side of things, because they only have several chances left. And as chaotic as Indianapolis was in shaking up the championship, tonight may add to that list.
And well, let's talk about championship, because big news with qualifying already in the books. Cooper Webster, points leader, missing in action. The chance for Diogo Pinto, Gustavo Ariel, his red line teammate, to try and take a jump on him, or maybe Phil Kraus, Luke McEwen. This is though where that point that Kenneth just raised is going to be so important. Just this and the trip to the WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca to come. Phil Kraus and Rob Malechka are going to be circling the 3 ovals we've got left, and the 150 points available just for winning the race, Kenneth. That's what's going to be very much at the priority, the forefront of their mind.
And that will create a huge swing in the playing for the championship. We've seen Redline dominated up until this point. Mid-Ohio could be the changer, but we may see how it all fares down. This track was opened all the way back in 1962 and was actually a longer road course. They had a series of turns called the Oak Tree Bend, but they got rid of it in favor of the Thunder Valley downhill straightaway, which you'll see at the tail end of the circuit. This track clocks in at a little over 2 miles. 13 turns, 1 keyhole, and 1 carousel. Lots of different corners that you can find here. And also, like Barber Motorsports Park we encountered several weeks ago, Arjuna, elevation change. That'll mean a lot for those who are trying to get the best grip off the corners and get their setup proper for tonight's race.
And the one thing you don't want to do, be headed off down to the sand trap on the exit of that back straightaway, where traditionally they start the race, but we start on the traditional pit straightaway. Going to be very hectic through 1 and 2 on that climb up towards the keyhole. But qualifying, like we mentioned, already done and dusted. The drivers getting themselves situated and ready to go for the 40 laps of action. Let's kick off the second half of the INDYCAR ButtKicker iRacing Pro Series and take you down trackside to the starting grid, where Eduardo Leo going to try and become just the second driver to get onto pole position for 2 times this season, but more importantly, the first driver to win 2 times this season. Jordan Caruso will try and deprive him alongside. Do Kawanda have a slightly better race car than they did the last time we went road course racing? Michael Romanidis will certainly be hoping so, alongside Luke McEwen, who's really going to try and take the fight after Indianapolis bit him. Diogo Pinto up there in the championship. He's got Elliot Vader on, fresh off his podium from Indianapolis, full of confidence as well. Michele Costantini hoping just to finish a race without some damage, alongside of Gustavo Ariel with Peter Berryman and Florian Lebigra, the rest of the top 10. Kawanda, Redline, and Apex all up there and showing their strength in terms of road courses. Ricardo Rico, he can challenge from the edge of row number 6. Michael Johnny is going to be alongside him, and with 0.02 of a second splitting those 2 drivers. David Toth, Sam Coit at share row 7, with Jose Soria back in the IndyCar world after a couple of weeks away, traveling around Asia. Tamas Shimon rolls alongside him in the 16th position, with Phil Kraus, Dan Amor. Some work to do for the both of them, rolling from row number 9. 10th row for Xavi Ross, and to Jaden Munoz, who celebrates his birthday today and turns the young old age of 20 years young. Josh Chin and Jacob Oster will line up behind, with Rob Malechka, a win a week ago, but 12th row of the grid in qualifying, and a lot of work to do alongside of Adam Crane. We're starting to get towards those that struggled in qualifying a little bit more. UC Katia, Jeff Drake, and then Brendan Lichtenberg at the tail end of the field. Slightly reduced field as well, not just Cooper Webster missing, but a few more drivers as well. Kevin Burrell, Luis Nunez, Brandon Treno, and Sota Muto, who, very cool, Sota Muto out there racing at the Motorsports Games, where not only are they going to be racing all sorts of real-world racing, they're going to have an esports competition as well, featuring iRacing for the very first time. Going to be very cool to see how that all plays out. We've got a full pace lap, though, to set you up for the race. So, Kenneth, talk us through today's ButtKicker race analysis.
Well, it's a pretty short race, Arjuna. Same length as the qualifying series race held here a couple of months ago. 40 laps we go at about 90 miles and a little under 145 kilometers. Back to the road courses, which means yellows will not play a factor like it did last week at Indy on the oval. Obviously, we've got the push to pass back in effect, as well as the tire compound situation. How fun of a conversation we had with the alternate strategies and the widespread at Barber. We could see very well the same in this track that is rather known to eat up the tires quite well. We know that drivers must use both of the tire compounds at least once in this race, and you do need at least one pit stop to make it all the way to the end. We should also expect Arjuna for a lot of the guys in this field to pit a little over or around halfway into tonight's race.
We're expecting lap 25 to be around where the fuel window comes into play. The question, as always, especially with the weather that we've got in store for these drivers, relatively strong winds to consider as well. But it's that track temp, 110 Fahrenheit. It's relatively cool, and it's going to mean the alternate tires can probably run the entirety of the 25 laps. And if you can get enough speed out of them, they are quicker. And so that's going to be the key point to keep an eye on. And there is quite a big split in terms of who's elected to start on those red sidewalled alternates and who's on the black sidewalled primary tires. The top 7 are all on the tire that's going to be faster but wear a little bit quicker. And then there's a little bit of a split on the edge of the top 10. It's going to be very interesting with some drivers, Kenneth, having to try and fight their way forward past some drivers technically on the slower compound of tire. Could be in for a chaos-filled start.
And with this being as late in the championship as it is, Arjuna, you're going to have guys that are going to start on the alternate or on the primaries with that idea of, I'm going to swing for the fences. They want to go for either the prize cash at the end of the season if they can get a spot in the top 10 in the point standings, or if they want that shot at the championship. Points leader Cooper Webster is missing tonight, so plenty opportunities in this race for guys around the top 5 in the points to make inroads and get the points lead heading out of here, entering Gateway in the Worldwide Technology Raceway.
And with Cooper Webster missing, someone must step up. 5 races done, 5 left to go, and with 5 winners already this season, will we finally get someone to repeat? Eduardo's Leos hoping that will be him, and look at the chaos already behind, and a crash! Lou McEwen gets tangled up, and a Coranda car in the grass trying to avoid all of it. One car, Jeff Drake, straight on into the wall. Not quite sure what arc of brakes we've got there. Turn 1, it's chaos as well. Who needs to stay on the tarmac as we rumble up towards the keel? But Leo, Romanidis, and Diogo Pinto, 1, 2, and 3. Jordan Caruso slips to 4th. There's chaos behind.
And that's another dagger for Jordan Caruso and Luke McEwen, who crashed out of Indianapolis last Thursday night. They get collected before we even cross the line to complete the start of the race. Both of them getting involved. Elliot Veyron, who finished in the podium last week in Indianapolis, also taken out right before the field enters turn 1, and the casualty list is large. Florian Labigra, who came into this one 9th in point standings, he's got severe damage. Jeff Drake is out of this, and Michael Janney also with damage as well. So plenty of guys having to service their cars down pit road. We're not even done with lap 1 yet.
Michele Costantini was on the grass out through Thunder Valley, and Gustavo Ariel took advantage, and someone's down to pit lane. Now, is that a penalty for jumping the start potentially, or is that a meatball? Can't quite tell, but it is Jordan Caruso, and he's got a meatball. Big, significant stakes here for some strong drivers. It means Eduardo Leo already now 3 seconds clear effectively of 4th position, and then a couple tenths more back to the first driver on the alternate compound of strategy. That is the first driver on the primary tire, different strategy. Getting myself confused, especially knowing the tires have those names as well. Kenneth, this is a long race. I think already you're going to see drivers on the pusher pass and trying to clear themselves of those behind.
And they want to get track position as quickly as they can, and also you don't have a lot of passing opportunities here at Mid-Ohio. The keyhole is 1 in turn 2, then you also have turn 4, but when you go through China Beach, the S's, and about Thunder Valley, you don't have a lot of space to maneuver around, so plenty of opportunities to pass in the first sector of the road course, but at the back end of it, you are staying back in traffic unless you force a mistake out of the guy in front of you. So with the 200 seconds of push to pass that everyone has available, they're going to use that as the iron fist to push their way through and muscle their way around the field, especially given the chaos early on as guys like Thomas Simone, Florian Labigra starting this race already a lap down on lap 3.
You can see them actually just coming out of pit lane and trying to stay out of trouble. They recognize already they are a lap or more down already. They don't need to get involved with those that they're trying to now stay out of. We will try and figure out what all went happening in those first couple of seconds. Remember, we hadn't even technically got to the line before the crash begun. Caruso gets hit by McEwen. Did Caruso lose the rear end, and is that where things got set up from?
And that may be what happened there. We'll get another look at that, but here is, I believe, Florian Labigra going off in turn 1. Plenty of others that are in there as well. a Drago Racing entry. You also have Thomas Simone who got a piece of that. It looked like off of the final corner, turn 14 or 13 rather, has a bit of a bump. When you get to that left-hander, the cars can easily spin the rear tire. So Caruso, who was eager to get going for turn 1, has got a little sideways, and one backup of the field, and that long line of cars will get everyone out of whack. And that's what happens with McEwen and the several other guys that get into the rear ends of others, and all of a sudden creates mayhem and takes out a ton of heavy hitters in the point standings already.
I can't wait at some point to see some live points, because yeah, this is going to have shaken up quite significantly. Do you think Pinto's going to take the championship lead? Gustavo Ariel won't be far behind him. The margin behind is going to be what's important. Let's take another flashback to the start here and try and figure out exactly how this begins. Now, Caruso, remember, he's trying to make sure he gets as good a jump as possible here. Yeah, it's the smallest wiggle, but with the biggest of consequence.
Now you've got Luke McEwen back there. Look at the car sending it through the grass just to get away from it all. But you're right, it's pretty bumpy, turn 13. And again, the rear tires light up, and Caruso with that big of a wiggle, I mean, he just saving the race car. Could not expect that everyone behind would start stacking up and creating the incident, but it's rear ring damage enough to take him out. And some news for a bunch of the guys at the back that were involved in the lap 1 incident. Florian Labigra, Michael Janney, they've called it quits on lap 5. It is done for them in this race from Mid-Ohio. They'll have to look forward to next week at Gateway to see what they can do. Elliot Veyron in the fight for 9th place with Ricardo Rico, who's got some heavy wing damage on the front right of the race car. Veyron down the inside, keyhole pass.
Not much that Rico could do there. You could see the amount of understeer through that fast left-hander to open up the lap, and we'll see down to the end of this back straightaway. Can Phil Kraus get on the push to pass to try and close? Now, Rico's on the alternate tires. Phil Kraus is on the primaries, and so I think if you're Phil Kraus here, you've got to start thinking the long game. Remember, started back in 17th position did the 99 private label Team Hype machine, but there you can see just how slow the Drago car is, where it needs the downforce, and so watch how much it's going to lose out through Thunder Valley here. A couple of car lengths entering this complex. By the time they get back to the line, Phil Kraus is going to be eager heading down to turn 1 to make this move sooner rather than later. The problem is Ricardo Rico's trying to get to lap 15. This car can only go 25 laps. You only want to stop once for fuel in this race.
Yeah, and if you pit so early on in the race, I mean, you're wearing down that primary tire for the rest of the going. And we know that the white-sided primary tires are the ones to go for the long run. But if you're going longer than everyone else, you're just adding so much tire wear, especially with the time you'll have to spend on pit road for damage. Down the long straightaway off turn 1, inside is Philip Kraus. He'll dive into the top 10 for the first time tonight. We know that Kraus had struggled in the first race of the season at Indianapolis with the road course, but ever since then, he's picked up the skill. 2 top 5s, including the win on the oval side of things at Iowa, but a top 10 at Barber after some wonderful strategy. So keep an eye on the private label Team Hype machine as we watch Jacob Oster, the driver from Arkansas, working his way through on Rico now.
And I tell you what, he is going to be all over the back of the Drago 51. If he can get a top 10 here, he will be very, very happy with himself, knowing the level of strength in this field and staying out of all the trouble and qualifying relatively down there. There is some good points on the cards here for a driver who, remember, points are paid out all the way down, championship prizes, I should say, paid down all the way to 15th. So you're trying to make sure you get as much as you can. Top 12 also retain their licenses, their eligibility for 2025. And you can see there, the battle for $50,000. Championship winner grabs $20,000 to their name. 11th through 15th, $500 to add to their name. Jacob Oster's thinking of that as he jukes it up the inside. And 1, 2, 3, 3 consecutive laps. Ricardo Rico drops now to 12.
And those are a ton of the drivers either on the primaries or the alternates, so it doesn't discriminate here for Ricardo Rico, who will have to pit as early as possible. The good news for Rico in that Drago Racing entry is that Jaden Munoz is a bit of a ways behind. It's about 2.2 seconds to the tune of that distance between those drivers. So Rico can relax a little bit, maybe hang in the draft of Oster and see what he can do to nurse this car around. It's all about now stopping the bleeding at this juncture and just limiting your degression in the rest of this field. The look on board, scratching the neck a little bit, just trying to get himself settled. I think that's the biggest thing for everyone, Arjuna, especially after the chaos in lap 1. Everyone's telling themselves, please let this be a calm race until the end.
Yeah, and you know, after a start like that, you can only imagine, right, the amount of radio communications going back and forth. If you are a spotter or an engineer for one of these drivers, the main thing that you're trying to do, calm them down, get them out of that mindset of blaming someone if they were involved in some sort of incident. Last thing you want them to do is be antagonized. Instead, you want them to calm down and focus on the task at hand. Task at hand right now, by the way, inside of that front three, it is still only split by 1.2 seconds, and you can never count out Michael Romanidis in terms of trying to fight his way on forward. And so sandwiched right now by a pair of redline teammates. Yes, Eduardo Leo leading the way, Diogo Pinto sitting behind as they head up through Thunder Valley for the 8th time this race. I think this is very, very finely poised. Romanidis is probably sitting here saving some push to pass. Eduardo Leo's burned about 20 seconds so far. But the thing that, Ken, is we've talked about all across of this season, Diogo Pinto likes to sip on the push to pass at the start of the race and then start to dive into the reserves as we head towards the checkered flag.
Yeah, he's always really calm early on in these races, and oftentimes, I mean, it hasn't worked out to his favor when he's trying to crack into the top 3 and make an effort for the race win, but it has gotten him some really good finishing positions. And a lot of times, given how swingy this championship is with the ovals and the road courses, that's sort of all you need, right? Some decent finishes, and if you're not the greatest on one type of track, if you can get a fine finish out of that, then you can make the use of your skill set. And Pinto is only one of one in drivers who have finished in the top 10 for every single round in this 2024 championship. So it's paying dividends here. And off the rear wing of Romanidis, Pinto is starting to approach in the uphill run to Thunder Valley.
And I wonder, we saw this last time we went road course racing. Cowanda's road setup maybe struggling on the long run. They were flying in queue. Caruso on pole at Barber, slid backwards pretty quickly. Romanidis a little bit unsettled there out of the final corner wide and just avoids clipping the grass on the outside. Now already 1.2 back as they fly out through turn 1. Got to be careful of track limits on the right-hand side. An uphill braking zone. Look how Pinto closes. That is the championship situation. And what stands out in my mind? Well, A, the fact that Diogo Pinto is leading, but B, if Eduardo Leo can hold on to the lead here, a driver that's had his fair shares of issues since he won to open up the season is going to be back within 20 points and a chance of fighting for the crown.
Nothing like a breath of fresh air when you get a second chance of life in the championship. I mean, Leo spent the majority of this championship, other than after Indianapolis, the first round of the series, he spent it as the last redline driver in the point standing. So he's been watching his teammates succeed here and then, perform really well. He's saying, where's my time to shine after my win? I need to get back on the top spot where I belong. So the 17-year-old is already starting to cook here, but it's all about when he can make this pass complete on Romanidis. We've seen many of the attempted passes off of turn 1, entering the keyhole where you've got so much draft and potential to work with. But Romanidis will hold serve for right now. A wonderful effort by the driver who finished on the podium last week at Indianapolis.
And it was a really fun race at Indy. If you watched last week, you're watching tonight, you're thinking, I'd like to learn more about the championship standings, where we've still got left to go. Head on to iRacing.com/INDYCAR-esports to learn a little bit more today. Still got a long way to go before our champion's crowned. Might be Pinto in the conversation. And if you're thinking about, oh, maybe I could be part of this series in 2025, remember, only 12 drivers from 2024 will keep their licenses, their eligibility for next year. New memberships are 40% off. This is the view from on board a Dallara IR18 running out through Thunder Valley. Head on right now. New race day is every day, and I've got to say, one of the best combos on iRacing that you can jump into. Mid-Ohio's so great, the INDYCAR so great as well. Not so great when you've got a Coanda car in front of you trying to slow you down, I guess.
Well, probably not for Pinto, but this is a wonderful view. I mean, it's so much fun to challenge the different types of corners here at Mid-Ohio because you have almost it all. You've got a lot of fast speed corners like turn 1 here. You've got a really slow and patient corner when you're trying to get back on the throttle here in turn 2, the keyhole. Then the long straightaways to use some draft along the way. And then you've got the sweeping sections, the very technical part of China Beach and the S's. But like I was talking about, the only driver in this series up until now that has finished in the top 10 in every single race. He's finished around the same part of the field in the last 3, and look where he sits, P6, or P3 rather, a little higher, but some of his teammates back there, but Pinto has certainly improved on his streak and looking to grab his second podium of the season after Long Beach.
And this is the thing about Diogo Pinto. When he won the 2022 Porsche Esports Super Cup, he only actually won one race the entire year, and it wasn't the feature race. The way the Porsche Esports Super Cup works, they have a sprint race and a feature race. He won the sprint race, not the feature race, which pays out less points. He got several podiums, plenty of podium, and only one finish outside of the top 10. It was that consistency that led him to being coined the nickname, or dubbed with the nickname, Captain Consistent. And guess what? We're going to have 4 races left to go after this, and yes, they're not necessarily in his wheelhouse, Kenneth, but when you're able to still rack up those sort of finishes, it's just going to give you some confidence, something that I don't think Ricardo Rico's got, as the birthday boy Jaden Munoz tries to grab 12th position away from the Drago 51.
And Munoz is going to hope here that Rico doesn't hold him up any longer, because you've got a strong trail of cars behind in Joshua Chin. UC Katia was moved up to 15th. Adam Crane, and even a bit of Robert Malechka if they continue to woe each other down. So off the keyhole, Munoz cannot still make the move on the inside. He'll try again at the entry of turn 4 down the long straightaway. But you mentioned earlier about the mentality of getting into an issue early and crew members on the team trying to calm them down and get them focused for the rest of the race. I mean, you could say that for Pinto. A lot of drivers can swing mentally between these skill sets that they enjoy and are really good at, and the skill set that they probably need a little work on. For a ton of guys, they look at the oval as a, oh no, another oval where I have to try and survive again instead of, you know, prospering like I do on the road courses. Pinto, though, has taken that approach of, I'll be calm and collected, I'll learn from the ovals even if it isn't the best, and I'll stay alive in the races, and that has mattered a ton. Here's a look from Josh Chin, the Orlando, Florida native, looking forward at the battle between Munoz and Rico, and like I was talking about, Arjuna, it's going to back everyone up as long as Rico stays ahead. This is 12th place that Chin is trying to catch up to.
I love this camera, and on that run up towards turn 2, you're going to see just how much of a steep uphill it is as well. You use that to help you slow down. Not going to see a move forthcoming from Munoz just yet. Instead, watch here. He'll arc off the corner. He's trying to get on the push to pass, but you saw the rear end step out. That's just not ideal for him. And so, as he tries to now burn through the seconds of push to pass that he's got available, Ricardo Rico does the same, but does it in defense. He's got enough top speed. He holds on to that spot. And this is where the frustration will build. For Josh Chin, by the way, this is the highest he's run all season. The best that he's finished, let's not forget, 19th at last week at Indy. He went one lap down relatively early.
And he's also missed the race. That was at Barber Motorsports Park, which could be the closest baseline to compare to this track here at Mid-Ohio. So Chin, though, I like the run right now for his team and himself as he tries to catch up to Munoz here. This is one of our best battles on the racetrack. But you were talking about how Rico was using the push to pass. Well, it looks like the concern not anymore as Rico finally budges. You called it, lap 15. He's on pit road this time.
Hey, sometimes I'm right. Did say that about 10 laps ago, though, so there was about a 50% chance I'd be wrong as well. Now, he'll spend 5 seconds longer in the box to change the front wing. It's about 13 seconds total that he will spend stationary, getting a set of the Firestone tires and a full tank of fuel before he drops and rolls to run the remaining laps that he's got ahead of him. Might have a tiny bit of fuel saving to do, but not much by any means. Lead has grown. I've been keeping an eye on this one. Eduardo Leo punching in some consistent lap times, the only way to describe it. He's now 2.3 or so seconds clear of Michael Romanidis. And look how the pressure's building from the Portuguese driver behind, Diogo Pinto, slowly starting to wonder, right, am I going to be better off trying to make a move here if I've got at least 10 laps left to go before I'm thinking about pitting?
You know, and I've noticed here as well with Pinto that in a lot of the other road course races this season, he's yet to burn his push to pass until maybe more than halfway. But for him right now, he's already used a bit of it already at 175. So he's starting to use it, and here down this straightaway he will. And there's Romanidis, the gap to the race leader, and how big of it is from Eduardo Leo. It's about 0.3 of a second. So as soon as these guys engage in the battle, Eduardo Leo is saying bye-bye and waving away to the rest of the crowd as he continues to pull away.
He's not quite doing the Deadpool dance as the song's being sung, but yes, bye-bye-bye indeed. I'm just looking at the body language of the car. It's not looking as bad as it did at Barber, to be fair, but that red line car is so much more comfortable through all of these corners. Romanidis is having to maximize the track. He's having to. The car does not want to turn if he doesn't open up the car as much as he wants to, and so he's in after 15 laps. They have prioritized making the primary compound of tire work. Oh, this is why I love IndyCar, because you get these different strategies. Redline go long on the alternates. Coanda think, no, let me get on to the primary sooner rather than later.
And he is one of 2 cars that visited pit road on this lap. Elliot Veyron, the teammate who had been involved in the lap 1 chaos before we even crossed the line to complete the lap. He's on pit road this time as well. So the early birds here for Coanda already burning what they did. I'm surprised though that we're seeing at least a pit stop this early, because a lot of guys would figure that halfway or a little bit over halfway is the way to go. But 3 laps shy of our official halfway mark at lap 20. Coanda wants to maximize the fresh tires early. The only problem is they'll be down a ton of distance that they'll have to make up.
And one thing that we've seen over the summer is you can set this IndyCar up, the Stellara iRacing chassis, in so many different ways. And so you do have to use both tire compounds, remember, the primary and the alternate. But how you make speed from them can be very, very different. And Redline, I think back to a race earlier this summer at Road America, they were 15 kilometers an hour, so about 10 miles an hour, slower down the straights, but faster through the corners. And so across a 40 laps, how you use the tires really does make a difference. Going to be very interested to see how this plays out. Now, Romanidis has come out in clear air, and that was important. Could not afford to be dropped back into drivers with some worn tires. He needs to now get the pedal to the metal and very much go, go, go. There's again a reminder, the way these compounds work, primary tires, slower but more durable. They will last a little bit longer. And even though we've got cool track temperatures, Kenneth, I guess the thing that we have to remember, there are parts of this track that can be quite taxing on the tire.
Yeah, you've got a lot of the S's at high-speed corners, too, where it is giving the load to the left or right front tire, and it gives you a ton of problems entering the corner. Look down here where you can drift up high, easily enter into the grass as you're entering the China Beach section and getting out of it. It can be really, really tough on the rubber. But for Romanidis here, who only escapes out of this strategy call inside the top 10 barely as he gets a little loose up the hill, he has the chance to push as hard as he can now, knowing that he'll gain all of the time later. There's Peter Behrman pitting from the top 10, so he's the second driver to make this call in the top placement of the running order. We'll see where he fans out.
And that's, I think, important to see. Again, another driver deciding that let's mix things up and not follow Redline in the exact same plan that they've got. Where does he feed out? Not going to be that close, I think, to Romanidis. He comes out behind Munoz. That's relatively painful, but let's see what happens. Josh Chin, will he try and make a move up the inside? Berryman's trying to cover it off. So for the time being, I think as the tires now build up in pressure and temperature as well, Berryman should hold on to that spot and look to try and make his move on Jaden Munoz sooner rather than later. Diogo Pinto's lost a bit more time to Eduardo Leo, so Leo's really clicked into gear here in the 6th round of the championship, and I guess we do need to bring this back up. Kenneth, we talked about it just before we went live. Mid-Ohio was the final round of the qualifying series, and much like Eduardo Leo won the first round of the of this Pro Series and has struggled since then, he won the first round of the qualifying series and struggled after that as well. And so he comes back to a track where he had to deliver, had to perform to qualify into the series. He did that, and now he's leading once again.
You know, it maybe gives you a little more excitement, all right, of I've delivered here before, I can step up to the challenge now as Jacob Oster for Team I5G heads on to pit road at lap 20. This is exactly what I mentioned, the halfway mark, but for Leo, I mean, that shows you how resilient he's been this season as well. I mean, he's learned a lot through the qualifying series, but as the season has taken him for a wild ride after the Indy GP, he's had some spotlight moments just outside of the top 10 at Iowa, then at P6 at the Indianapolis Oval, a race where Redline was not considered the favorite by any means because of their non-speciality at the oval side of the sim. So for Leo to do this in the juncture of the season that he's doing it, I mean, this could give him a lot of momentum into those last 4, because if you can carry all of that momentum into a ton of tracks that maybe don't fit your skill set, you can be in a really good place. It's 4 seconds now. However, Leo has used a lot more of his push to pass comparison to Pinto, so keep that in mind as well.
We are halfway through this race though, officially, so drivers can start to be a little bit more liberal with the push to pass if they have not done that already. Leo's closed up to the tail end of Jason Brophy, so that's a car that's in danger of going a lap down. This, though, is a battle between a car that's just come out of pit lane and a car that's on worn tires. And Joshua Chin passes Brendan Lichtenberg like he's standing still and not moving anywhere. And look at the slide from Ricardo Rico behind. Almost slides into the tail end of the Hyperstar, but up through Thunder Valley, gets the move done, and a fresh swing suits that Drago Racing number 51.
Well, Chin's strategy here, now that he's switched to the alternate tires, the red sidewall tires, at this part of the race, it's going to mean that he's going to have to nurse these tires for about 19 more laps, which probably means that he'll try to extend his gap to everyone else as quickly as he can. As the leader comes in, Eduardo Leo is in this time by, but if you go on the primaries now, you'll have to be really, really aggressive just to gain all the time.
I just noticed as well how close that was between Jason Brophy and Eduardo Leo on the pit entry. Did Leo lose half a tenth, half a second? Is that something that Michael Romanidis will be hoping for? Here he comes, sweeping out of the final corner. Looks relatively comfortable, under control as he puts the power down. There goes Leo, Pinto released as well. And I think both of them will jump the Koran Esports number 53. Going to be quite close up towards the keyhole, but yes, Pinto has leapfrogged Romanidis. Red line 1 and 2, we've still got 18 laps left to run, but Eduardo Leo looks on course to potentially becoming the first repeat winner of the season if he stays out of trouble here at Mid-Ohio.
And Arjuna, there's a little bit more reassurance for Leo and Pinto now that they've beaten Romanidis out of pit road and out of turn 1. They are on the same type of tire as Romanidis, that primary white wall tire, and they've got 5-lap fresher tires than Romanidis does. So the good news for them is that they can be conservative on their tires, and they probably will still end up in a better place than Romanidis at the end of this one, because 18 laps still cause a lot on the rubber side of things. So a great strategy by Redline to make the move and jump Romanidis behind them. What a wonderful battle that we're having for 5th on back. Gustavo Ariel, Michele Costantini, who's just begging to finish a race in the top 10 again, and Peter Berryman, who pitted about 3 laps ago. 3 of them all in contention, nose to tail.
And again, this is where we're starting to see the contrast on strategy. There's a handful of drivers here on the primary compound of tire, but they're being pressured by the drivers on the alternates, and you can see the push to pass on the left-hand side. David Tolt has almost burned through 3/4 of the 200 seconds that you start the race with. In contrast, Peter Berryman barely used 60 seconds or so as he finally gets into the green once more and gets about 60 additional horsepower helping him down this back straightaway. It helps these speeds build up into the braking zone down at China Beach. Slightly defensive line being run there behind. Opens up the door, opens up an opportunity. Surely not going to be a pass here from Sam Coiter to rip a spot away from David Toff. It's taken 1, 2, 3 corners now, and as they slither through the S's, Coiter officially up to 8th.
And there's not a lot of space there in turns 6 and 7, so you can easily get wiped off the racing surface if you're going side by side and you're trying to carry a ton of momentum. Toff made the right move to let Coiter by without any resistance, just in the air of safety, trying to stay out of the walls and stay out of the grass. We know what happened lap 1 already, so you don't really want to replicate that, and Coiter wants a little more as he'll go to the outside of Peter Berryman. A power move in turn 1 for P7.
And that might just be the move of the season, or maybe the move of the day at the very least. It's opened the door for a chance behind, but Peter Berryman slams the door shut on David Toff as those 2 primary compound shod cars will continue to rumble around and see and probably watch Sam Coiter depart up the road in front of them. Did notice, by the way, if you are watching with us on the iRacing Esports Network on INDYCAR's YouTube, very appreciative that you've joined us, but Team Redline, as ever, watching along, and they've managed to rouse Luke Crane, Enzo Benito, Chris Lolland, and a certain Max Verstappen to watch along on their Twitch channel. So maybe go hear what the Formula One World Champion of the World has to say about some of his teammates up front and winning, but maybe stick around here as well, because there's still plenty of fighting left to go. David Toff, we saw him try the move on Berryman last time by, and now with that gap up the road, what's he thinking as he tries to work his way toward the line?
Well, he's thinking, I want the best finish of the season. He finished 8th in the opening round of this championship at the Indianapolis road course, and ever since has not been able to break a top 10 ever since. Drago Racing had started the season off quite hot. They started to fall off quite a bit with all the struggles they encountered, whether it be a lack of pace sometimes or just getting involved in bad luck scenarios. But Top is right on the cusp of getting this 8th place spot. Good news is that both of them are on the primary, so they're a little bit on the same level. But for Sam Quaitert up the road, reason why he was being so aggressive to make those moves is because he has to compensate for the lack of pace that he'll have later in the race. With about 5 to 0 laps to go, you're going to have that drastic fall off on the tires. So Quaitert really has to play this aggressively early just to gain the spots later.
We're making up new words here. I don't mind it. Dramatically.
That was my fault. A little lack of English there.
No, I mean, sometimes you need to make up a word, right, to accentuate things. And I'm just saying, Kenneth, I know it's a slip of your tongue, but I might steal that from you. Right. No credits, though. If it's a slip of the tongue, I don't have to credit you for it. 2.5, 2.3. The gap up front, it is starting to close. Gustavo Ariel's just made it 3 red line cars on the podium as well, and passing Michael Romanidis. I mean, they clearly are maybe the strongest of the teams on the road courses. Sam Quaitert's trying to show that as he looks behind Michele Costantini. His alternate compound tires not helping him towards the keyhole. Saw him run a bit wide, and now burning through, push to pass as well at a decent rate of knots. Has only got 60 seconds left to go. As he lunges up the inside down at China Beach, he's already made a couple of bold moves. This might be the easiest one of the stint so far.
Well, you might also think that if you're Quaitert, you may be regretting using all of that push to pass early in the race, because now that you have to push with these red-walled alternate tires and you're in a sea of white-sided tires all around you that have better wear over the course of the run, you know, if you don't have push to pass to give you a little extra boost, you're going to be lost in the water by the time this race is over. So Quaitert, again, on the aggressive strategy. He's one of 3 guys that are on the alternate tires with Philip Kraus and Gustavo Ariel, who's been in the best place of them all, having stayed in the top 10 with the primary tires. And Jaden Munoz may just have an unscheduled pit stop here. No, he's gone 26 laps. So Munoz has gone the longest of anyone in the field, 26, and he comes down pit road this time.
Same story for Brendan Lichtenberg, by the way. So 2 drivers going long. And with Jason Brophy officially now DNFing from this race, it means in the battle to be not last on the road courses, it's now 2 and 2 between Brophy and Lichtenberg. They've had this little playful battle between the two of them. It's all now up for stakes and up for grabs when we make our way to the WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca. A little story within the championship, if you will. Berryman looks, well, like any sim racing driver does, as cool as you'd like, but got to wonder if he's starting to get a little bit flustered behind the collar right now as David Toth just continues to try and put that pressure onto him. 1.5 seconds they are behind Michele Costantini, though, and they gained about half a second on that last lap alone. So gonna have to be looking forwards and backwards at some point. That's a little bit wide, though, from Berryman as he talks over the radio. Don't think he's too comfortable right now.
He's probably not, but the worst case scenario is that if they do catch up to Costantini in due time, you're going to have another car in front of you with dirty air, number 1. But number 2, you're going to be forced in the middle of the Oreo sandwich between offense and defense. How much are you willing to give to either side? They're going to catch up to Brendan Lichtenberg, who I believe just came out of pit road. We'll let them by at the exit of the keyhole. But as soon as they catch up to Costantini, Berryman either has to be aggressive and go under or over Costantini for the position, or maybe relinquish a spot to David Toth, because that pressure is not going away anytime soon.
Phil Kraus is inside of the top 10 as well, so very good day for him, you'd have to say. Establishing himself inside of the points where you need to place yourself. Still got those 3 oval rounds to go. Going to be quite fun next week, and just a reminder of how the points play out. Right-hand side, the live point situation is 50 points for a win. So Diogo Pinto leads Gustavo Ariel by 18. Eduardo Leo's 22 back. Cooper Webster, even with missing a week, is still only 28 points off of the championship leaders. Remarkable when you think about that. But it's the 99 and the 91. Those are the 2 that you've got to keep an eye on, Kenneth, when we talk about the oval pedigree.
And the best drivers out of that, of course, from that private label Team Hype group that are performing pretty well right now. Philip Kraus, who, like we talked about, picked up the top 10 at Barber, is in a place for a top 10 right now. As on the inside, Jaden Munoz goes to Jacob Oser. This battle decided for 11th place easily into turn one of the Team i5G machines that survived a big time wreck in the waiting laps at Indy. There he is sitting 11th.
Again,
12.
Now 12, was 11, but won't be disappointed by this by any means. Still, I mentioned he had a chance for a top 10. He'll take a 12th. You'd believe that as well. Driver that has been on iRacing for quite a while, but only jumped into the INDYCAR about 3-4 years ago. In 2021, qualified for the top split of the Indy 500, the iRacing Indy 500, using the iRacing provided setup with a few clicks that he made here and there. Just a reminder, fixed setups that iRacing provides aren't always bad. Team i5G snatched him up. He was in a 3-wide battle on the final lap for the 2022 iRacing Indy 500. Ended up second. It was not to be, unfortunately, but still showing that he could be a contender. A couple more races left to go where his strengths will be shown. Now, there's 3 red line teammates up front, but one of them is on a different strategy. Is Gustavo Ariel, who is about half a second a lap faster than his 2 teammates in front of him, going to want to take over the lead? We've seen Redline being very willing, Kenneth, to work together amongst teammates, but there's no teammates when you're fighting for a championship.
Of course, and for Ariel here, who had his worst finish of the season of 15th at Indianapolis, given everything that went down, he desperately wants to win. He wants to make it 6 different winners, and he wants to give him a better shot at the championship when we're in that oval side of things. He is on a heater right now, but again, that's because he's on the alternate set of tires. He's on lap 8 with that stint. So as this race progresses with about 9 laps to go, the performance is only going to even out with Pinto and Leo, especially as Ariel has, I believe, the least amount of push to pass in comparison to his teammates up the road. So like all those guys who went on the tires of the alternates, at this point of the race, they're going to have to be as aggressive as possible. There's a look at Ariel. That gap closing to Pinto. May make the move maybe the next lap or so if he can catch up.
Remember, he qualified relatively poorly. I say relatively. He was down in 8th position, but he's had to fight his way forward, and I think that's where partially we've seen that push to pass burn come from. This is a driver as well that you've got to admire the attitude. I still remember talking to him about a year ago, and he told me it doesn't matter whether it's in the real world, in the sim racing world, I just want to be paid to drive cars. He's getting to do that right now. Of course, joined up with Team Redline. Before Team Redline, he was signed by Tony Kanan's esports team, which for him was a dream. He still remembers vividly watching TK race in person, and the emotions and the memories of all of that. He's going to be racing in just under a month's time as the Prodigy 3 Championship kicks off, racing for Thibaut Courtois Racing, the Real Madrid goalkeeper. Be very excited to see how he gets along. 2 seconds the gap between Leo and Pinto as well. So as much as we're talking about Gustavo being quick, Diego's also closing that margin as well. All 3 of the red line teammates on the push to pass as they work down the back straightaway. 9 laps left to go. Okay, Kenneth, your Team Redline's manager. I'm putting you on the spot. What are you telling Gustavo to do?
I don't know. At this point, in my opinion, I'd say just have at it. Just if you're going to make a pass, make it easy. Don't run side by side for that long. Please don't wreck some unnecessary wrecks in any case. Don't wreck the race cars. But, you know, for Ariel here, if you let him be a team player, you can tell him just hang on. We'll get up to each other and we'll have a top 3. We'll all get some remarkable points along the way. For a ton of the guys deeper in this top 10, Arjuna, they're not thinking that. They're thinking individual success and individual success only at this juncture of the race. There's Joshua Chin, who's still on par to get his best finish of the season, and Jacob Oster. That battle is crunching down. It's under half a second for 12th place. Remember, Oster had fallen back to the birthday boy, Jaden Munoz. Well, now he has to stop the bleeding here with about 8 laps to go.
This would be his best finish on a road course by far for Jacob Oster. Previously 18th at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway Grand Prix, the first round of the championship. Did finish 5th at Iowa, but up and down, to say the least. Long Beach and Barber, Indy Oval. It was a decision, not a good decision. I don't think you'll mind me saying that. To pit late in the race, both he and his teammate Brandon Traino came down. Traino involved in a late race incident, and we very well may have seen the last of Traino in the series, given already that he had missed a couple of the opening rounds of the season. Any chance of fighting for the championship was already done and dusted. See what that means, though, in terms of that top 12. Again, I think that top 12, as we head into this back half of the season, That's where a lot of focus has got to be as well, Kenneth. Who will be in the championship in 2025? Who's got to re-qualify before they can fight once again?
And that gives you a lot more of incentive to run well if you're around that cut line. You know, a guy like Michael Romanidis, who has struggled a bit to start the season, got that podium at Indianapolis last Thursday and is just now starting to click off a ton of great runs, including tonight, if he can keep up with P4 right now. And he's sitting 13th. So as of right now, before this race started, he would have been out. He would have had to requalify for the series, but just alone with this race. And unfortunately, you know, there's a bittersweet moment with his teammate Jordan Caruso being taken out so early in the going. Romanidis is taking charge, and with some struggles by other guys that are ahead in the standings, he can easily put himself in a bit more of a comfortable spot and put as much of a buffer as possible in these final four to the rest behind him.
Other thing to remember, as I said earlier, there's 50 points for a race win. Now, that is just the points awarded for the race results itself. There's a bonus point for pole position, bonus point for leading a lap, 2 bonus points for leading the most laps. So hypothetically, my assumption here, well, Eduardo Leo doesn't have the fastest lap of the race, but that doesn't matter in this championship. He is still going to get 54 points from this, so that is very, very important. Do note that Gustavo Ariel's dropped back a little bit. I think the tires have started to fall off, and that car's starting to look a little bit more ragged. Take a look at the replay down through turn 1.
And as the tires wear Arjuna, you're going to have moments like this. Bumps in turn 1. Ariel with a ridiculous save keeps the race car collected. Obviously, that bleeds a lot of time to his teammate Pinto, but you're right. The threshold is passed for the alternate tires on Ariel's Dallara IR18. He's already about 6/10 slower than your leaders up front on that last time by. Give or take the little slide in turn 1, but he's going to continue hemorrhaging more of that time as we progress, which is to the point I made. Be aggressive so early in the run, make up the time, because you know you're going to start falling off later, and that's what's happening to Ariel. He can still creep up to a top 3, which is good news.
So 4 seconds to Michael Romanidis, who has still got 55 seconds of push to pass left to go. Just wonder if maybe he's having to save a bit of fuel and not going to have a chance to deploy all of that. Similar sort of situation for some drivers who pitted early. Elliot Veyron's also got 48 seconds left. David Toth, Peter Berryman. Now, David Toth's got 18 seconds left of that push to pass. Berryman 30, which he can use to defend. They've got Phil Krause, who's closed in the private label team height number 99, one of the 5 winners that we've had this season, of course, but Krause is on these alternates that will, at this stage, likely have passed their sell-by date and likely be sliding a bit too much for comfort. And so Krause, as much as he is trying to use a bit more of his push to pass in reserve to try and close, have to see if he's maybe been able to save his tires a little bit more. David Toss had no ability to make his way past Peter Berryman. 5 laps left to go. Surely he's not going to find a way on through.
Well, he can. That's if Berryman makes a mistake. We do know that there's still 5 laps to go, so plenty of time for someone to go off track, do something out of line that takes them out of the contention for the position. And I'm sure Toth is just waiting for something to happen. He's waiting for the right moment. Can be a pretty patient driver, but he's just stayed around that gap of around half a second or a little more as they come across to the start-finish line. But we were talking about point standings and who can make inroads in the championship even this late in the going. Toth is one of those guys. He hasn't had a top 10 since the opening round of the championship, where he finished where he sits right now, P8. So I'd say even if he can't get by Berryman, this is still a really successful night for himself and Team Drago Racing, because again, they started off hot. Now they're digging themselves out of the trenches in this championship, so it will be a positive note for them heading into Gateway and ultimately into the last road course race of the season at Laguna Seca.
It's going to be a lot of fun at Laguna. Of course, everyone talks about the corkscrew, not the scariest corner on the track. That's the corner before. The corner that leads onto the Rahal Straight. That's the one that's going to bite. You best believe that. Thomas Chamon's had a few issues here and there, but as you take a look at the 11th through 20th points standing, very important that Simone's had his issue. David Toss having slightly less of a bad race than he's had in the past. He's 15th in the point situation, but only 1 point behind 14th, only 5 points in front of 19th, quite significantly though, almost 30 points behind the cut line.
Yeah, it's a lot when a big discrepancy between those drivers, and you look at 12th and 13th where Labigra sits, it's 17 points to the next car in line, which is Jordan Caruso, and Labigra and Caruso were both taken out of this race, so they'll even out, but obviously there could be some waves made by those 15th on back in the standings, like a David Toth, who can take that momentum, use it for the rest of the championship. But I mean, again, like we said, past halfway is where the bet is almost fully made. You can still make an effect on it, but it probably will just be managing where the position you put yourself is in. So, you know, for a lot of these guys, they're just going to try their best to have a good moment at the end of the championship and hope and pray that it's enough to make at least the series next year, because qualifying in the next year probably will be a huge gauntlet to run.
And I guess the other thing, right, again, we brought it up earlier, but 11th through 15th all still in the prize money at the end of the season, so it's a little bit in terms of the prize pool to think about as well. Looking off the back of the Team i5G entry, still with Josh Chin lurking, but unable to really make any sort of impact right now. Did see for a second there that Josh Chin did touch the push to pass, burned about a second or two to try and close up through the final sector. The Firestone tires putting that traction down quite significantly through the back of the car, but with 2 laps left to go. Chin's still got 23 seconds left. Problem is, Oster's got 16, which really, you're thinking about this back straightaway. And 10 seconds over the next 2 laps should be enough to hold on. Let's see if Chin can blast off this corner well enough and get the drive into China Beach.
They're going to punch that push to pass button. They've got Adam Crane behind, but at least a second and a half, a little under that. So Crane also on his tally to his best finish thus far in this year's championship, along with Chin. But yeah, they're going to even out. It's a 5-second difference, so I wouldn't say it's that dramatic between them, if I'm going to use that word again, but they'll be really close at the end. I'm sure that Oster will be able to hold on for that 12th place spot. But up front, Arjuna, it has been all Eduardo Leo. The gap is crunched down a bit to Jogo Pinto, but as Leo takes the white flag, it's smooth sailing to try to be the first repeat winner in this championship.
And it's been, again, a season of what-ifs. Summer almost went like that as well, let's not forget, after Eduardo Leo had to fight his way back. Won the first round of the qualifying series, but then some bounce-back moments needed after disappointments through the qualifying series. It was here at Mid-Ohio where he punched his ticket to the INDYCAR ButtKicker iRacing Pro Series. Won the first round at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but since then, only in the top 10 once. And that was where we thought he would struggle, at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway around its oval. He reminds us, though, the Leo level is what you're all trying to be. Here at Mid-Ohio, the first repeat winner of the season, it's Eduardo Leo taking the win in the round 6 of the INDYCAR ButtKicker iRacing Pro Series.
And here's the battle for 7th. Ferryman holding on over David Toth. We were looking back at Jacob Oster and Joshua Chin. That one's still undecided in the run up the hill to Thunder Valley, but Oster should have enough to hold on over Chin. But still good news for the 93 nonetheless. He will get his best finish of the championship after spending a ton of it with a lot of struggles off the final corner, turn 13. He's got it. All these finishes may be significant in that battle for continued eligibility in the series, and even further down the road, there's a Drago Racing Machine getting by Jose Soria, trying to get by Xavi Ros off turn 13.
And Xavi Ros had plenty of side pod damage earlier, has been able to bounce back to the best of his ability, grabs 17th as Jose Soria returns to the series and grabs himself an 18th position finish here at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. But that is the red line machine that dominated proceedings, and I feel like I've said it at the end of every race so far. The winner has dominated, and that's been true in many ways, but that means for the first time this season, it's a familiar face in victory lane, a familiar face dominating out front. Eduardo Leo burning it down in your ButtKicker winning moment of the day.
What a job by Leo to complete this race the way he did, and to have momentum carried over the last 2. We know that over the first 4 races in the championship, not a finish outside and not a finish inside of the top 10 other than the win in the opening race of the year. But for everything else, Indianapolis last week, a top 10, completing with a win. Leo chasing the top spot in the championship with this dominating victory.
And so the Leo level leading Team Redline with four of their team cars inside of the top 5. It is 2.5, the margin between Leo and Pinto at the end of the race, though. 40 laps, the most that they were separated by was 4 seconds. Going to be very interesting between the two of them. 4 races still left to play. Gustavo Ariel fought his way forward as well. Some great moves in his battle to get up to the podium spot, while Michael Romanidis will be slightly disappointed, I guess, in some ways, but 4th for him after starting up in 3rd. Sam Koiter, contender for move of the season, and maybe 2 contenders to make his way to 5th in front of Michele Costantini, who for the first time this season finishes a race without any sort of damage. Peter Berryman 7th, the only of the Apex Racing team machines to survive here today, with David Toth, Phil Kraus, and Elliot Veyron, the rest of the top 10. Some margin back to those finishing on the 2nd page. Jaden Munoz fights his way forward on his birthday to 11th position, with Jacob Oster, Josh Chin, and Adam Crane behind. All 3 of those drivers +8 minimum, +10 for Oster and Crane. Ricardo Rico lost part of his front wing, still finishes 15th in front of Rob Malechka, who was told by his teammates it was an oval pre-race. Didn't help him return to victory lane here today. Javi Rose, Jose Soria, they finish on the tail end of the lead lap, while Brendan Lichtenberg and Tamas Shimon finish 19th and 20th respectively. UC Katia, Jason Brophy, Dan Amor, and then Jordan Caruso will all grab a couple of points, while Florian Lebigra, Michael Johnning, Luke McEwen, and Jeff Drake, 1 point for all of them. Victims of an incident before we even got to the line, let alone turn number 1. One driver, though, that was able to stay out of all of the chaos was Eduardo Leo. He's standing by with Kenneth Bueno down in victory lane.
A big smile on his face. Eduardo, you became part of history when you won the inaugural race of this series at the Indianapolis GP several weeks ago, but you make history now in this series to become the first repeat winner. How does it feel, number 1, and how relieving is it to finally getting win after what's been a roller coaster of a campaign?
Yeah, good evening or good night. It's been, as you said, a really difficult championship as of now. Of course, it's been nice bouncing back in Indianapolis in the oval, because it was really the weakest track for us. So it was nice having a good result already in that track. And then, of course, we come here expecting to be at the top again, given the road courses. Obviously not easy, because it's only 1 left after this one, so we'll have to deal with that and obviously try to maximize our points in the next 3 ovals and see what happens. But yeah, everything went perfect, and I'm happy right now because I recovered nicely after a bit of a struggle in the last couple of races.
And it's been a big stride from here until now. We know that Cooper Webster, the points leader, was missing, so a lot of points to grab there. You're going to shoot pretty high into the top 5, I imagine, after this big-time win. But you said it there, maximizing the points on the ovals. 3 of the next 4 are going to be on those oval tracks. So what is the team communication like? What do you guys talk about in preparation for those races to close out the championship?
Well, it's pretty difficult not having a lot of experience there. Of course, we try to understand as much as we can, looking at the previous races, and just try to replicate what we can do. And that worked very nicely last time out. Of course, having also a nice strategy. So yeah, we just need to make sure that we have everything up the best of what our capabilities are, and hope for the best.
Well, Eduardo, enjoy this moment now. 2 wins on the season. I'm sure it must feel pretty good. Congratulations on the W here from Mid-Ohio. We'll see you in the gang at Gateway next Thursday.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.
Eduardo Leo, the race winner here from Mid-Ohio. His teammate, Jogo Pinto, follows suit in 2nd place. And Jogo, this is your best finish of the season 1, but you're still the only driver in the campaign to have had a top 10 in every single round of this championship. So how meaningful is it to cap off another consistent run here at Mid-Ohio tonight?
Yeah, it was another good race. As a team, we've been pretty strong, especially on the road courses. And yeah, that's why I think I'm leading now the championship. It's with the consistency. I still hope to win the race, but so far so good.
So with Cooper Webster missing this one, you take control of the championship, like you said. How does the mindset change, or does it change at all? And do you feel a little bit of pressure heading into Gateway?
It definitely changes, because when you're leading the championship, there are certain situations where you have to think twice about making a move or going on a bold strategy. You have to think maybe it's just worth to take the points that we have and keep the lead in the championship. So definitely things change a little bit from now onwards. But yeah, the main goal is still to get the best result and go race by race.
A standout step for you, Jogo. A wonderful performance here at Mid-Ohio. On behalf of all of us, congratulations on the P2. We'll see you at Gateway next week.
Yeah, thank you.
And that is Redline 1 and 2, followed by the third place car, also a part of that team Redline, Gustavo Ariel, who joins us now. Gustavo, let's talk about the strategy. You were one of the only drivers in the group to go on the alternate tires later than everyone else. What was that like? How did you manage all of that at the tail end?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you so much. I was expecting not to be here today. To be very honest, I had a bunch of P4s during the qualifying series. I think it was 6 in a row. And one in the Pro Series as well. But today, the quali was not very lovely. But on the first stand, I had a lot of luck at the start because I avoided a lot of cars crashing. I didn't even see the replay yet. But glad I didn't have damage, so I could continue with no problems. The first stint was difficult because I had to cover David Todd. He was very quick with the soft tire, so I had to wait for the switch over when the primary are faster than the alternate. So I could hold him, and after on my last part of the first stint, I could push and I could catch the guys in front. I decided to pit together with Constantini, and yeah, it was a good strategy. I'm happy with it. I went wide a bit in the pit exit on turn 2, but I'm happy. Very consistent championship for me. I'm P2 on the championship now, I guess, in my book, so I'm quite happy with that. And let's keep pushing, and let's see what we can do next round. Ovals, I don't have a lot of experience, but let's see what we can do.
Lots of momentum gained here at Mid-Ohio. Let's talk about the ovals, though. Our second shortest track of the championship, Gateway next week. How do you prepare for that, and what do you prioritize in putting those laps together?
First of all, we don't have much racing experience, and because on the oval, the strategy changes a lot, like one lap to the other, if you have a caution or not. I race in Gateway on the qualifying series, and I finished P4 as well with the Mr. P4. But yeah, I like the track. I think we have a good base for that setup for that track. So let's start to work a bit more on that. The oval guys has a bit more advantage now with more ovals than roads, so let's see what he can do. I'm quite happy with the result, and thanks so much for who's cheering, the Brazilian people, everyone, the Team Redline fans. It was quite a nice round, and I'm happy, and I want to say a big thank you to the Team Redline sponsorships. And let's see, it was a pleasure to sit here on the interview today.
And looking at the Twitch chat, the support is massive for you and all of the Brazilians representing each other. Gustavo, congratulations on the podium tonight for Mid-Ohio. We'll see you at Gateway next week.
See you. Bye-bye, Langos. Thank you.
Eduardo Leo, Jogo Pinto, Gustavo Ariel, that's your top 3 from Mid-Ohio. All 3 of them Redline machines.
And Lango indeed. Well, it was interesting hearing the thoughts of those drivers, especially given what we talked about, the dominance of ovals in the back half of the season. And we look at the point situation: Pinto, Ariel, Leo, Webster, Coiter. Redline 1 through 5. But then comes Phil Kraus. And so as we get ready to go to our next oval in 7 days' time, he'll be thinking, how do I start making inroads in the 37-point swing? Now, the difference between finishing first and second, Kenneth, is 10 points. So if Kraus can win the 3 remaining ovals, at the very least, he'll be 30 points closer to Pinto at the top.
The storyline has been Redline dominating the road courses, Team Private Label, Team Hype dominating on the ovals, and back and forth. Who can spoil each other first, and who can stay ahead in the horse race to the championship end. And here's where we start our oval marathon. Worldwide Technology Raceway at Gateway, under the Gateway to the west. And the Arch, it'll be a wonderful race. This track is known to eat up the tires, number 1, but you don't have a lot of banking in either corner too, so you also have to manage the throttle. And like Gustavo said, strategy could change at any given moment. This will be really big next week on Halloween.
You called it, Halloween. Will it be spooky? Will it be scary? who's going to get the treat. Can't wait for all of it. The puns will be flying. Maybe some costumes will be on display as well as we make our way to the Worldwide Technology Raceway. Both of the ovals we've had so far have finished under caution. Strategy still very much all in the air. Chaos to kick off this race at Mid-Ohio. Plenty did not see the end. One driver, though, dominates up front. And so 6 rounds into the INDYCAR ButtKicker iRacing Pro Series, we have finally had our first repeat winner as Eduardo Leo reminds us of the Leo level. On behalf of our team behind the scenes, for Kenneth Bueno, joining myself, Arjuna Kangi, thank you so much for your company. Still a long way to go in the championship, and I can't wait till we crown our champion here in the inaugural INDYCAR ButtKicker iRacing Pro Series.